Right, good morning and welcome again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. Just let me get my headphones in the right place. What's today's show? It's number 605. It's 31st of May. It's the last day of spring. And we have again packed show for you today. Sadly, a motorcyclist who was racing another rider is to stand trial in Scotland, charged with for deaths of 3 other bikers. There's been a stabbing at a Northern Ireland motorcycle meet. KTM, they can't stay out of the news, can they? They're accused of a motorcycle emissions scam. I'll explain what's happened there. Sadly, there's been a fatality at the TT, and the sidecar events have been removed from the program after a huge crash involving the Crow brothers. We'll then have a look at some news in brief from around the world. We'll have a look at Auckland bikers who've been protesting about the rising levies charged to two-wheeler owners. Kenyan economics is behind what is a rapidly expanding market for electric two-wheelers. And we'll have a look at the BREKR B4000 and explain why I'm not convinced that serves any useful purpose, unlike those Kenyan e-bikes. And finally, today we'll have a look at some statistics from Northern Ireland of killed and seriously injured crashes. And we'll ask if they actually represent quite what they're claimed to. So settle yourselves down with a brew. Stay with me for the next 45 minutes or so, and we will take you through all the stories in motorcycle news today. Right, okay, so what do we start with? Well, basically, always try to look at something of general interest for the beginning of the show. And you may recall that last week I had a story about a collision that took place at a traffic intersection in Canada, and I had a glitch with the photo feed and the pic failed to display. Well, hopefully I've got it here. There we go. So that was last week's story. I've just clicked the wrong button. There it is. And as you can see, the motorcycle appears to be hanging from a traffic signal. I must admit, my first thought was that was faked up. But it appears not. It appears it was a real story. I found several credible reports. But here is a photo I initially thought was genuine. Now, let's have a look at that in a little bit more detail. And you may recognise that if you're a Londoner. It's the Strand Underpass Kingsway Tunnel. And what it appears to show is a Waymo, one of the self-driving taxis that are currently under trial in London, apparently driving the wrong way out of the tunnel. Now, the story said that the taxi had gone in the wrong entrance and it had been blocked by the police on its exit. And then I thought about the story a little bit harder. I mean, first of all, it's hard to see how the police could have responded so quickly, because it only takes a sort of a few seconds to drive through the tunnel. The second thing is it's almost impossible, I would have thought, to drive into the tunnel the wrong way, because it's on the entrance is the wrong side of a central barrier. So you'd need to be driving against oncoming traffic for some considerable distance to actually reach the tunnel entrance. And the third point is how would the tunnel have been empty all the way? It doesn't seem very likely, does it? So I then found an alternative version of the story, which seemed a little bit more credible at first, claiming that a vehicle had broken down ahead of the Waymo, blocking the tunnel's exit, forcing the operator to make the U-turn, and the police car was at the tunnel entrance to stop normal traffic flow from entering it. But that still didn't sound very likely. After all, the tunnel's actually not very wide. So I dug a little deeper, and at this point I discovered that although both versions referenced local reports and witnesses, neither provided any links. So I did a bit of a fact check, or at least I tried to. I found no credible source actually reporting the incident. It's only appeared on social media. There's nothing from either the TfL or the Met Police, who would normally be expected to report an incident like this almost immediately. So that makes me think that this is a fake image and this incident never happened. It's people who don't like the idea of Waymos, who are creating fake publicity about them. And so to a photo which isn't fake, but is fake, if you see what I mean. Now, I often despair of the quality of UK rider safety campaigns. They're often, I think, very banal indeed. But this one actually made me chuckle. I think it's from New Zealand. I certainly spotted it a few months ago, and I've been quietly saving it in the folder for the UK summer. And finally, on to another photo, and this time it's definitely a real one, but it is attached to an iffy statistic. Now, under the headline, the IAM and the NMC back cheese cutter ban, the less than popular nickname for these wire rope barriers, which the article says is the effect on bikers unlucky enough to hit them, IAM Road Smart are calling for them to be replaced. They're on 150 miles of road in the UK, apparently. And so they're running a petition to this effect, and they are backed by the National Motorcyclist Council. And the IAM say, and I quote from the press release, they account for 3/4, 76%, of fatalities or serious injuries when impacted by those on two wheels. This compares with just 16% for other road users, demonstrating the risk of barriers in general pose. Motorcycles are also 33 times more likely to become involved in a fatal single barrier incident than cars. When the cable barriers come into play, the risk is magnified. Cable barriers present an issue for motorcyclists because of their upright posts, whereas a standard guardrail has no protruding parts. These posts are more likely to seriously kill or injure a motorcyclist. Well, there are some figures and there's some facts there which definitely aren't entirely reliable. For starters, most Armco style barrier, that's the sort of the W metal barrier that you normally see, that still has exposed posts. They just don't stick out beyond the barrier. The barrier actually runs along the top of the outside of the post, but underneath, where a sliding rider will impact the post, they are still mostly exposed. They are not normally in the UK protected with underrun barriers. But the main point is that the figure is meaningless. It's statistically ambiguous to the point of being almost impossible to interpret without any original source, which we're not linked to. They account for 76%, but who or what is they? It could mean 76% of motorcyclists who hit wire rope barriers are killed or seriously injured. It could mean 76% of all casualties involving wire rope barriers are motorcyclists, or it could mean 76% of all motorcyclist barrier collisions resulting in KSIs involve wire rope barriers. That question is simply meaningless. And you might note that the other figure they gave you was 16% of other road users. Well, add 76 and 16 together and you get 92%, which clearly doesn't end up at 100. So they're not proportions of casualties from the same data set. And then you get motorcycles are also 33 times more likely to become involved in a fatal single barrier incident than cars. But 33 times more likely than what? Is it per vehicle? Is it per mile traveled? Is it per journey? Is it per impact? We don't know. There's probably a report out there somewhere which actually detailed all these figures, but by the time it's been interpreted by someone who wants to use it as ammunition to condemn this style of barrier, and then the whole story has been run through editorial compression for publication, all the context has gone, and we're left with a number that just sounds authoritative but actually means nothing as presented. Right, okay, so on to the weather forecast. Now, the record-breaking heat wave is behind us, and as this high pressure that brought it slips away, we are returning to the more usual flow of breezy southwesterlies, bringing cooler Atlantic air, and that'll bring a more usual mix of some sun but rain at times. Now, today, most of the showers will be in Scotland. Much of the country is cloudy with some isolated showers. Down here we have some, it's cloud with a few blue spots in it. Temperatures range from the high teens in the west and up to the low 20s in the southeast and East Anglia. Now, Monday looks cloudy with outbreaks of rain spreading from the west, but the southeast may escape until later in the evening. Tuesday looks unsettled, variable cloud and showers, some heavy and thundery in the afternoon across much of the country, and temperatures will be down a degree or two on today and tomorrow, and close to the seasonal norm, actually, back to where we should be. Wednesday is expected to see a band of rain moving in across western parts, especially to the north and west of England and across Scotland, where there looks to be the south a chance of thunder, but in the southeast it does look set to remain dry. Thursday, again, mix of sunny spells, some heavy showers likely for the whole country, risk of thunderstorms in the afternoon, and the end of the week looks to remain cool and unsettled. So it will feel a lot cooler than it did last week, but it is actually fairly normal temperatures for the time of year. Right, okay, on to some news. Now, first story is a rather unsettling one. A 33-year-old man is standing trial next year, and this is because of a crash, an incident involving 3 other motorcyclists who all died in a high-speed incident. Nathan Gibbon is accused of causing the deaths of Jason Gibbon, Andrew Larty and Georgia Tate by dangerous driving. Now, the crash happened on the A6088 in the Scottish borders in July in 2024, so it's taken some time to get here. The prosecution claims that Nathan was racing with fellow biker Jason at high speed in close proximity when he braked suddenly for a bend, and this caused Jason to go wrong side of the road and straight into the oncoming traffic, where he hit another motorcycle. And this was the motorcycle ridden by Mr. Larty and carrying Miss Tate as the pillion. All 3 died at the scene. The case will be heard next year in Edinburgh at the High Court. Gibbon's legal team have pleaded not guilty on his behalf. Now, a man has been stabbed at the storming of the Castle motorcycle meet, which takes place on Wednesday nights in Carrickfergus Castle car park. The police said the victim was stabbed in the chest and also received head injuries in the incident, which happened shortly after 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday. A male suspect reportedly fled the scene on the back of a motorcycle following an altercation. The police are appealing for information. Suspect is described as being approximately 6 feet in height, medium build, aged in his 40s. Now, this is a weekly bike meet. It attracts bikers and spectators, it said, from all over Northern Ireland, and the victim was taken to hospital for treatment, although his injuries are not believed to be life-threatening. Now, much as I love watching the TT, it's with a kind of dread, frankly, as to when the next incident will be. Now, sadly, Daniel Ingham, 33, he was killed in an incident at Doran's Bend during qualifying on Wednesday. This followed another crash on Monday when a rider lost control of his bike and crashed his motorcycle into the crowd at the exit of Parliament Square in Ramsey. This happened during practice. He injured himself and 8 other people were hospitalized. 2 of the spectators were said to be still receiving hospital treatment on Tuesday. And at that point, a decision was made to close the viewing area for the rest of the event as part of a comprehensive safety review. Now, on Thursday, it was confirmed that the sidecar class would actually be removed from the schedule. There would be no sidecar races this year. And this has followed incidents involving outfits driven by Maria Costello and Sean Parker, and then Ryan Crowe and Callum Crowe. These were on Tuesday and Wednesday, respectively. Now, Maria Costello seems to be the most seriously hurt. She's been transferred to Aintree Hospital near Liverpool, where her condition was reported as serious but stable, and she continues to receive treatment for the injuries she received. Parker, her passenger, was conscious. He was treated for chest, leg, arm, and facial injuries. There are no further details regarding the Crowe brothers, apart from the fact that they were taken to hospital with head injuries. The latest reports say they were sedated, but there is no immediate risk to life. The incident involving the Crowe outfit was caught on camera, and it has appeared on YouTube. And it seems what happened is that the outfit actually took off over a crest. And I have read concerns about the use of sort of ground effect aero, the sort of thing that Formula One cars use, being applied to sidecar outfits. And whilst Formula One cars run on exceptionally smooth surfaces, the difference is, of course, that the roads are not smooth. Sidecar outfits have suspension, which also moves, and though they are low to the ground, they also take off over the bumps. And it looks like what happened is the air got under the leading edge of the Crowe outfit, and it took off. And finally, Saturday's races were cancelled due to low cloud and worsening conditions around the circuit. And sadly, also at the pre-TT event on the Boulogne circuit last Sunday, 68-year-old Alan Oversby lost his life in a crash when he was competing in the 400cc category. Right, okay. So what else have we got? Well, KTM can't seem to stay out of the news, so let's just zoom in on that. And the latest story comes from an environmental journalism group called DeSmog, and they say that they've been working with journalists in several European countries, and they claim that new road homologated enduro machines from KTM, that includes Husqvarna's and gas bikes, they are being routinely de-restricted at KTM dealers after sale, and being handed on to the owner complete with the registration documents and the number plate that would attach to a road legal motorcycle. Now, the story claims that reporters actually visited dealers posing as customers, and they allege that they were repeatedly told that these restricted enduro machines could be returned to full performance specification after delivery to the dealer. So as part of the investigation, emissions testing was commissioned. It went through the International Council on Clean Transport, which is an organization which apparently played a key role in uncovering the Volkswagen Dieselgate scandal that you may remember from some years back. Now, this issue obviously centers on the road homologated nature of an enduro bike. Now, unlike a pure competition machine, a motocross machine, which comes with no lights or, sort of anything else that makes it road legal, enduro bikes are designed to be legal for use on the roads because they are often used by riders who need to travel on public roads between enduro stages. So as a result, they have to fully comply with all emission and noise regs. Now, the allegation being made is that the motorcycles are modified to in a way that removes their road legal status, and this involves dealer level participation rather than being something carried out by owners after purchase. Now, KTM have strongly refuted that claim, saying, quote, "The KTM group sells its motorcycles exclusively in compliance with applicable European regulations." But they don't deny that dealers may be removing the bits that make them road legal, because they continue to say Buyers of our enduro machines are expressly informed that road approval expires upon conversion for competition use and that the machine may no longer be used on public roads. So what they're saying is if it is converted, don't take it on the road. They aren't saying we don't convert these machines in dealers. And of course, you can't use them anywhere in a public place. Here's a rather lovely photograph of a KTM bike perched on the top of a mountain. Now, unless that mountain were in private ownership, the bike would be required to be road legal to get there. So what does that tell us all? Well, basically, anybody familiar with the motorcycle industry, which would be most of my viewers, I'm sure, knows that this kind of modification happens all the time. There's an entire aftermarket industry dedicated to selling not for highway use conversions, exhausts, decap pipes, ECU flashes, even road legal exhaust systems with removable baffles, which make them non-road legal. These are all available to riders to remove what they perceive as restrictive hardware on road bikes that everybody knows will continue to be ridden on public roads. And this is what's behind sort of repeated proposals to sort of lock down the powertrain of road-going motorcycles to prevent this kind of modification. So the only real difference here is that KTM appear to be supplying parts direct to dealers to allow them to perform the de-restriction process in the shop, whereas most de-restricted or decatted, de-exhausted bikes are done at home by owners for road bikes. Whether this leads to formal regulatory action remains to be seen. Whether any steps will be taken against KTM, I don't know, but it could see KTM drop into some hot water. Right. Okay, we've got one comment here. Kevin's looked in. He says, unexpectedly available this morning. Nice to see you, Kevin. Right, time for me to take a quick sip of tea whilst I get the next section of the show ready. As always, can I ask you to take a moment to like and subscribe to this show if you've not already done so? Every click helps other motorcyclists discover my content, or simply share the word the old-fashioned way by telling your riding buddies about Elevenses they can watch on catch-up. Remember, my latest riding skills articles are always free, and you can get all the links delivered weekly to your email inbox by subscribing to my newsletter at survivalskillsuk.substack.com. Or you can use this QR code to jump straight to it, when the show's over of course. No spam, and if you don't like the content, unsubscribe at any time. Right, okay, so into the in brief section where I look at news from the UK and around the world. Now, first story is from Hanoi. Local authorities there have watered down the rather radical plans to ban ICE motorcycles from the city centre. They were supposed to have come in on the 1st of July. There are still some roads where ICEs will be banned, but it's at least triggered LG Energy Solution and Honda to announce some plans to install around 50 battery swapping stations in the city. It's all part of the pilot project to expand electric motorcycle adoption in Vietnam. Now, the initiative is being put in collaboration with the city of Hanoi, and it's set to begin in the third quarter of 2026, and it will include the deployment of approximately 500 electric motorcycles. I suspect they may be for hire, I don't know. LG Energy Solution, they'll provide the battery technology, they'll operate the infrastructure itself. Honda will develop battery packs, and these they will also obviously supply the motorcycles. Honda, you can see why they're interested here. They actually dominate the motorcycle market in Vietnam. They actually accounted for 86% of sales in 2025. So if they can't supply some electric bikes, they'll be in trouble when Hanoi does go electric. Now, a 17-year-old has been charged after a 94-year-old woman was struck by a Suron electric motorcycle in Fife on Monday. Pedestrian was taken to the Royal Infirmary of Edinburgh for treatment of serious injuries. The team was taken to hospital for minor injuries, and after treatment was arrested and charged in connection with road traffic offences. Now, after nearly 5 years on the streets, Newcastle's controversial e-scooter rental trial is coming to an end. Operator Neuron Mobility has withdrawn its scooters. They'll be disappearing today, probably end of May, it says, as part of a wider scaling back of UK operations, which implies they probably weren't making as much money as they thought. Now, the trial began in 2020 under emergency government rules, which you'll recall were designed to aid urban transport during lockdown. Newcastle City Council says the schemes provided valuable data, but supporters argue the scooters offered flexible travel. Critics continue to raise concerns over pavement parking, pavement riding, and conflicts with pedestrians. Now, if you're a regular rider in London, you will need to look out for around 200 more roads near schools where traffic will be banned at school drop-off and pick-up times. It's part of the scheme to improve air quality in the capital and to reduce road risk outside schools and to encourage walking as well. Now, TfL says that more than 800 roads throughout the capital currently designated school streets. Now, it's not the designation I have problems with, it's not their existence, it's the often invisible signing. There's a real need, I think, for custom signs here. Roads which have a no entry, sort of a no access sign. The whole point of this is that it's unless you need to access the road, and obviously if you need to access the road, you need to access the road. It's the problem is it's the time limits on them when they're operated. There's a camera monitoring them, and you will get a ticket. And I very nearly turned into one the other day, which had recently appeared, and on a route I was familiar with, and the sign was behind a tree. There was absolutely no way I could see it with the tree in full leaf until I was actually part way into the turn. Only a lucky glance at what I thought was a new sign stopped me making the turn completely. Anyway, a response officer from Warwick's rural crime team has spotted an electric motorcycle riding through Stratford-on-Avon town centre. Now, this one, rather unusually, was fitted with an invisible number plate, which obviously was grounds for the stop. The rider tried to make an escape, but somehow managed to hit his own kill switch. Now, the interesting thing was, apart from the illegal plate which caught the police attention, the bike was fully road legal, and had they not had that illegal plate, they probably wouldn't have been stopped. And had the rider actually bothered to renew his CBT, he wouldn't have been in trouble either, because his bike was seized for riding in accordance with other than a licence. And as the police pointed out, if he'd done his CBT, he might have been familiar with the rather advanced concept of not switching off your own motorcycle mid-escape. Moving to Dyfed-Powys Police, they say motorcyclists come here because they enjoy riding on our roads, but we want them to be safe. And so their specialist operations team decided they better know where riders were actually coming from. It had long been assumed that the majority of riders in the zone were from the north of England, but having collected the first part of visitors' postcodes at engagement events, they discovered many were travelling from the Midlands, the West Country, and even London. And that intelligence has allowed Dyfed-Powys Police to share the messaging on safety with other forces before riders even travel. So they want to focus on ensuring bikes are road legal, to encourage riders to be aware of group riding as a contributing factor in serious collisions, and to avoid risky overtaking, whilst also recognising the dangers of tiredness and long days in the saddle, presumably. Now, former Sampdoria and Greece defender Marios Oiko Numo has suffered serious head injuries after reportedly colliding with a car whilst riding a motorcycle in the Epirus region of northwest Greece on Saturday. He had emergency surgery to relieve pressure on the brain, and he remains in intensive care in a critical condition. Another form of sport, the Giro d'Italia, the cycle race, that has, according to the Daily Mail, quote, been rocked by a cheating scandal, with riders accusing broadcasters' motorbikes of providing a slipstream to leading riders. Now, this is on the back of a new record average speed of over 51 kilometers per hour set on stage 15, which is, I have to say, phenomenally fast. Now, some riders have voiced their opinion that the camera bike was too close. Maybe it was. Whether it was, cheating is a very much more serious accusation. It's highly unlikely that that was what was going on. But it's hardly a new complaint. It's something that is made virtually every time there is a breakaway. Miguel Indurain, the former champion, said that it was just sour grapes, or words to that effect. Now, weird story here from South Carolina. At least 19 people, they were injured in a stampede at the Black Pearl Cultural Heritage and Bike Festival in Atlanta Beach. This happened early on Sunday morning. The incident was around 1 a.m. and it was apparently triggered by an individual running, and this set off a chain reaction in the crowd. Police confirmed there were no fights, there were no weapons, no direct threats to public safety, but the local fire department and police did respond to assist those injured. The annual Memorial Day weekend festival attracts up to 40,000 visitors. So authorities are reviewing the incident for future safety enhancements. And here is a photograph of somebody who's got themselves into hot water, because his name is Mohammed Razai Rafin Sarkar, and he is the Bangladeshi Chief Executive Officer of Sylhet City Corporation. And he's also a Joint Secretary of the government. So he uploaded this photo of himself and his wife riding a motorcycle, neither obviously with helmet, and it was quickly pointed out that it was not just irresponsible for a government official to show themselves riding minus helmet in a country where helmet use is still patchy, but it's actually illegal. His excuse was it was early and the road was empty, but he did accept that riding a bike without a helmet is not right. Next time I will definitely use a helmet. Right, okay, time for another quick sip of tea. If you enjoy these shows, why not become a member of my Ko-fi pages? Just follow the QR code and sign up. As a member, you get free access to the latest articles and the Survival Skills ebook shop, with instant downloads of everything from free mini ebooks to ebook versions of my paperbacks. Become a one-off supporter and you'll open up the archive of over 1,000 articles. If you buy me a monthly cuppa as a subscriber, there's even more content to enjoy. Right, we've got quite a long show today, quite a lot to get through. So next story is from New Zealand, and this was an event where hundreds of motorcyclists were expected to ride across the Auckland Harbour Bridge. That would have been yesterday NZ time, early this morning, I suppose. Well, about 12 hours ago, isn't it? It's all in protest at rising ACC levies. Now, this is the protest was being organised by the motorcycle advocacy group in New Zealand, MAG-NZ. Now, I probably need to add a bit of context for non-Kiwis. The ACC, the Accident Compensation Corporation, it's a universal no-fault injury compensation scheme. Basically, you pay into this, and if you have an accident, then it pays out. It covers everyone in New Zealand: residents, drivers, riders, pedestrians, and interestingly also visitors. And it pays out regardless of who caused an accident. So if you fall off a ladder whilst you're putting a new tile on your roof, you're covered. If you have a crash on your motorcycle, you are covered for personal injury. It covers you for all medical treatment. That's GP, hospital, surgery, rehab. 80% of lost earnings after the first week. I think it does go down after a year or so. It covers you for long-term rehabilitation, which is, if you've had a serious motorcycle accident, can go on for years. It offers cover for home help, transport, specialist equipment if needed, and you get a lump sum compensation for permanent impairment. And as I say, the ACC does not require you to prove fault. So as a result, New Zealand does not actually require third-party insurance or even any kind of compulsory motor insurance, though the ACC won't pay out for damage to vehicles or property, so you do have to bear that in mind. So motorcyclists, they pay an ACC levy, and it does depend on the engine size as part of the calculation. So as far as I can tell from my research yesterday, the vehicle licensing, known locally as the Rego, that will set you back something around 60 NZ dollars to $100 a year. So it's a bit equivalent to our vehicle excise duty. And then there is the ACC motorcycle levy directly, which is between 280 and 600 NZ dollars per year. And there's also a small levy built into fuel price. So you also pay a sort of per mile sum. So add that all up. I can't give you the per mile figure, but the two fixed levies, it's somewhere up to a total of around 700 New Zealand dollars. Now, how much is that in UK terms? It's around £350. So here at home, obviously we pay taxes on fuel. A UK biker will also pay what's called vehicle excise duty. We call it road tax here. And you also have to pay insurance, which you buy from a commercial company. Now, for my 600cc bike, which is a fairly average machine, I currently pay £73 road tax plus around £540 insurance. Now that makes a total of £600 over 1,200 NZ dollars, and get this, it doesn't pay for any accident injury compensation. There is the NHS to cover that, but that is something rather different. So as I've explained to riders out there in the past who are really shocked at how much it costs here to sort of tax and insure a motorcycle, do be careful just what you wish for. If you want the ACC not to collect money from motorcyclists and you don't get cover for what you are covered for at the moment, just wait till it's replaced by commercial insurance companies trying to make a profit out of your motorcycle. Right, okay, so on to some biking news. Got there in the end. Now, we're so mono-focused on the UK motorcycle market here, we barely look to see what's happening anywhere else in the world. You know, we do sort of glance over to Europe. We may look at what's happening in Japan in terms of new bikes, or see what the US is getting. But generally speaking, anything else is treated as completely unimportant. Anything from South America, Asia, or Africa, in this case, is entirely off the map. And that's particularly true when it comes to electric motorcycles in countries where two-wheelers are genuine workhorses rather than playthings. And one of the more interesting motorcycle stories right now is actually coming from Kenya, where electric motorcycles are really taking off at quite considerable speed. So these are countries where two-wheelers are genuine workhorses rather than playthings. And these are some motorcycles from a brand called Spiro. Now, new figures suggest that more than 15% of all motorcycles sold in Kenya in 2025 were electric, which is an astonishing rate of adoption for what's still considered to be an emerging market. Now, the really important thing is why this is happening. In the West, electric motorcycles are often marketed around environmental concerns or high-tech performance, but the reality is that whilst switching to electric might save some fuel money for a commuter, most motorcyclists see the restricted range and performance as a significant downside to buying an expensive electric motorcycle. Now, Kenya and other African states look set to end up adopting electric two-wheel transport rather faster than the West. Not because people are wealthier, but because the economic case is stronger. For taxi bike riders, for example, in Nairobi, switching to an electric bike is said to be completely transforming daily profitability for working riders because, as I know only too well, as a working rider myself, we are extremely sensitive to fuel prices when they rise because it directly affects income. And that makes electric bikes increasingly attractive because they are slashing operating costs. Now, at the same time, the growing use of electric bikes means that companies like Spiro, Rome, and Ampersand are increasingly happy to start investing in battery swap infrastructure across East Africa because it's aimed specifically at the commercial riders buying their bikes. And this means riders can swap batteries in minutes, of course, rather than having to wait for a battery to recharge. And daily costs of these battery swaps are still less than petrol equivalents. Now, interestingly, Spiro at the moment is best described as an electric motorcycle assembler at its headquarters in Nairobi. Now, the country does operate in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Nigeria, Togo, and Benin. But the bikes are bought knockdown kits imported from China, built up in Nairobi, and some spare parts are sourced from India. Now, its Nairobi plant actually has a production capacity of up to 50,000 electric motorcycles a year. And Spiro, they say they have more than 100,000 electric motorcycles already on African roads. And they also operate 2,500 plus battery swapping stations across its markets. But, and here's the really interesting point, they want to do more. They want to shift the engineering, the design, the product, production capability to Kenya. And to help with that, Spiro has just bought out a UK engineering firm called Coexleon. Now, Coexleon already has operations in India and Kenya, and it specializes in electric two-wheelers. It specializes in the chassis and frame development, the vehicle integration, reliability engineering, the battery systems, and industrial design. So just about everything a motorcycle manufacturer looking to switch to electric framework could desire, really. And the firm already has clients in Ather Energy and Ola Electric, who are two of India's largest electric two-wheeler makers. So I think that's a very significant step. A UK company there bought out by an African company that nobody has ever heard of. And that leads me directly to my next story. And this is the continuing belief by some motorcycle manufacturers that Western markets will continue to support overpriced products simply because they're quirky or stylish, if you happen to be the designer, I guess. Take this bike. Let's give you a zoom in view. It's the BREKR, spelled B-E-R-K-R, all in capital letters, B4000. Excuse me. It was originally designed to hit the market at €3,995, which is about £3,500. However, COVID got in the way, and it's taken till now to get the costs back down to the point where they were expected to be, and the machine is now set to hit the road at that original slightly under €4,000 price point. But exactly what is it? Is it an overweight bicycle? Is it an underpowered motorcycle? Does it actually even have a role? There are two versions of this, either a 25 kilometer per hour top speed, which actually means it's illegal in the UK as it's not a pedelec, as you can see, no pedals, or there is a 45 kilometer per hour version, which makes it a moped. The battery technology is drop-in. You lift the seat and then that big square box under it contains two batteries. Each battery is 2 kilowatt hour big, which isn't very big, is it? There's room for a second, and if you drop the second in, you double the range from a fairly miserable 50 kilometers, which is about 32 miles, to 100 kilometers or just over 60 miles. But that extra battery will set you back €1,495. And if you want practicality, well, that comes extra too. There's no helmet lock, there is no luggage rack, there are no side bag carriers or side bags, even the passenger grab rail, although how you get one on the back, I think there are some rear pegs, I'm not sure. That is going to be another €500. So suddenly that bike is hitting €5,000. That's rather a lot for a funky moped. In terms of weight, the machine is 69 kilograms, minus the first battery, which is 10 kilograms. That's 80 odd kilograms for what is effectively an electric bicycle. If you've got the lower powered version, add the second battery and you're now up to just under 200 pounds. So it's not exactly featherweight, is it? Hopefully it'll be released with some of the vital components, which this one appears to be missing. If you look closely, you'll see there are no indicators and there are no mirrors involved, both of which make it necessary to make it road legal. Right, okay. So let's switch to the in-depth items today, finish off today's show. And it's back to statistics again. This is a headline story based on Northern Ireland crash data, which suggests that motorcyclists are at fault in over half of all Northern Ireland crashes where riders are killed or seriously injured. Now, the data does have a source, unlike that IAM story at the top of the show. It comes from Police Service Northern Ireland. It comes from the period 2020 to 2024, and it shows that 51 motorcyclists were killed on Northern Ireland's roads, and the Department for Infrastructure says the data shows that 52% of the KSI collisions involved motorcycles where the rider was at fault over those 5 years. Now, as always, there's a bit more to the story than the stats appear to say. Now, I just said that the data shows that over half of rider KSIs were coded by the police as having a rider-related primary cause. But it's not the same thing as saying that the rider actually caused the accident. When the police attend a collision, they must choose one primary causation factor from a fixed list. So it's a bit of a blunt tool, really. It doesn't capture anything like shared responsibility. It doesn't capture perceptual limits. And it doesn't cover any road design features that might have contributed to the crash. So it's simply the most visible behavior, if you like, at the moment of the impact. So it's not a black and white statement of fact. Now, for starters, only 25% of motorcycle KSIs involved another vehicle. Taking that 52% figure, it suggests that 27% were involved in a collision with another vehicle. Presumably, though, the motorcyclist was seen to be mostly at fault for those collisions. Now, where the motorcycle was the only vehicle involved, 31% were described as inattention or attention diverted. And they say this led to a total of 67 KSIs in that period. Now, inattention, it covers a multitude of possibilities, from daydreaming to trying to cope with too many problems at the same time and just being focused on the wrong problem. You know, riders, just like drivers, have limits to how much workload they can mentally cope with at any one particular moment. And, you know, if our attention is pulled to one particular part of a scene, we may not see another problem underfoot. Here's a very, very, very simple example. Imagine a wet road. Imagine a car pulls out in front of you. Imagine that you start to brake and you have an older non-ABS bike and your front wheel runs over a wet metal access cover as you brake, and you fall off and you kill yourself falling off the bike. You don't even hit the car. It is the sort of thing that can and does happen. Whose fault will that be recorded as? Well, it'll be recorded as motorcyclist lost control. The fact that it was a car that precipitated the action, you know, the car might not even have pulled into the motorcycle's path. It might have just move forward a foot, causing the rider to panic. But that's a problem where the rider's attention didn't spot the slippery surface. So this is a human attention thing. It's not necessarily a failing. Excess speed, that's another statement that we hear all so often, but often I say the rider had to get to the point where they crashed. So obviously the speed wasn't inappropriate. It might not have been illegal, but it wasn't inappropriate on the way there, because they got there, didn't they? So what changed at the point where the rider crashed? Excessive speed is such a simple and clean sounding explanation, but it really doesn't tell us why a rider chose a 40 point at that speed. Overtaking on the offside without care, that led to 54 of 64 total KSIs caused by the error, which implies that the other 10 overtaking KSIs were the other road users' fault, but it does sort of outline the risky nature of overtaking, which I keep coming back to. Summing up, the report may give you the numbers accurately, but the story being told really doesn't account for, it's a perceptual limits, road design, shared causation, and the framing really does reinforce the sort of the classic motorcycle to blame narrative, rather than giving you any kind of systems-based understanding of motorcycle risk. And that leads me to the final point of the show, where I just want to remind you that there is my survival skills e-course. I know e-learning is not everybody's cup of tea, but if you're open-minded about how you learn and you enjoy having your thinking challenged, then I believe you will be surprised just how effective online coaching can be. A couple of courses back, Ian said, and I quote, "I would just like to say how much I'm appreciating and enjoying this course. It's really making me think about my riding. The amount of time and effort you've put in is incredible. Thank you so much." It really is very, very good. And Nick said, "I second that." Now, we're about to enter a new month, so the latest course is up and running, well, just about to start. There's still time to sign up. It's £120, that's £15 a month, less than the cost of your average fry up and cuppa at the end of your Sunday morning breakfast run. And unlike the breakfast, the learning stays with you for life. So visit www.motoonline.uk. It's a nice, easy URL to remember to find out about all my online courses, including the e-course. So that's it for today. Thanks to everybody who's looked in either live. Thanks to everybody who will look in on catch up. You've been watching Elevenses from me, Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training. Make a date to join me for the next show next Sunday for another roundup of news, views and biking tips. And if you are out there on your bike today enjoying the weather, make sure you stay shiny side up, and I will see you next time.